Good afternoon and evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Today is Wednesday, May 31st, 2023, and this is What's Happening Dracut. We hope that you are enjoying this great weather we're having as we turn the page towards summer. And we have a great show here for you tonight. As you can see, I'm a little relaxed with the no tie on. We're getting into the summer mode, and so isn't the rest of the crew here at DATV. And we are coming to you live from our overly ostentatious studios here on Mill Street in Dracut. We have a great facility down here, great staff. They do a great job for us every week and every day of the year, presenting you with great programming for Dracut. And this show tonight is meant to bring you all the information you may not see or you may not hear in the mainstream media. We're going to tell you what it's like in Dracut, and we're going to tell you exactly where things are in Dracut coming up. We have a lot to talk about, and if you'd like to join us, you can call us at 978-957-4243. You can also join us live on Facebook. We're streaming live on our Facebook page. And you can get us live on Dracut TV, DracutTelevision.org.
Dracut TV, the initials TV.org. Dracut TV.
This is our little shtick, folks. And with us tonight is one of Dracut's premier architects and a guy who knows most everything there is to know about in terms of what's going on with zoning and planning. He was the chairman of the master plan, which has been shelved. But here he is, Dracut's own Philip Thibault.
Good evening, everyone.
Philip
Thibault, wow.
You are the one. You are the man here in Dracut that nobody wants you to be on any boards.
Yes, and they actively go after that particular goal.
Yeah. And how long have you been on the board that the infrastructure board? What is it?
Permanent Building
Permanent
Committee?
Building Committee.
Permanent Building is, I think, about 17 years to this point.
That's a significant chunk of your life.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. NEMCOG, Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, is, I think I'm celebrating 23 years there.
Now, are you a voting member on NEMCOG?
So I'm an alternate member, so I vote when the selectman representative and planning board representative are not there.
Okay. And we're going to get into a little bit of that and some changes that are going on over there as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But tonight we are Gordy Scottless. Gordy Scott has a commitment with basketball tonight. I think he's got some kind of a practice going on. It's summer ball and it's outdoors and it's good for him. And I'm sure his wife Jen is watching, as my wife usually is watching, to make sure that I don't make any faux pas. But doesn't mean that I'm not going to make any, honey. I do sometimes step on my toes. But with us tonight is our ace reporter who is acting as the Teflon Don of Dracut Television, Access Television, as well as What's Happening Dracut. And his name, I believe, is a male name, and he goes by the word Mr., not Miss, and he is Richard Silvio.
How are you, John?
I'm doing
I do
great.
go by he, him, his.
He, him, his.
Although I'm thinking toaster or attack helicopter might be nice.
You sure you're not a furry?
You never know, John.
You
never know.
There's a furry convention coming up soon.
Well, you know what I am tonight? I'm not furry. I'm Teflon tonight.
You're Teflon, you are.
And as Teflon, Jen, honey, I love you. I'll be home soon.
Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, we do not have a weather report tonight. Sean was a little bit
under the weather.
Under the weather. No, I just think he was busy. He had to work yesterday, and with the holiday weekend, it was kind of difficult for him to put one together. But he did tell me that the weather is great in Dracut.
Really, I disagree. I think storm clouds are brewing.
That's a lead-in to the whole subject matter of this evening. We do have a couple of things a couple of announcements we need to make. One, Phil, we have a birthday to announce.
Yes, Mary Gail, happy birthday.
Mary Gail Martin, who is chief aide or an aide to Colleen Gary.
Correct.
She is a cheerleading aficionado.
Oh, absolutely.
She's with Pop Warner, and I believe she does something with the high school too, doesn't she?
Perhaps. I know she very active in the community.
Okay. And her birthday is today. She's 21 again.
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. She's 21 again, right?
Yep.
And Brian Martin is very lucky to have her. But we know Brian doesn't realize that. But but our Superman here, our superhero, furry Teflon Silvio has an announcement also.
Absolutely. So this Friday night, if you're not busy, we have a graphic to show for a dance coming up. As you may know, I am the vice commander for the Sons of the American Legion here in town, and we are putting on a dance to raise money for the Sons, and the funding we get directly helps veterans in the community. It's this Friday, June 2nd, at the American Legion at 574 Broadway Road from 7 to 11 p.m. Tickets are only $5. You get them right at the door. There's going to be music from the 40s all the way through the 70s. There's going to be refreshments, food, basket raffles, 50s. It's going to be a wonderful time, and would be happy to have you.
If you have any comments that you'd like to make, then you don't want to call in, you can always write them on Facebook, and we'll pick them up here in the studio and announce them here and try to answer your questions as best we can. We have so many things going on, Phil, in town, right? Where do we begin? Where do we begin?
I don't know, because even the beginning is awfully far away.
The beginning, yeah, is right. Well, we do have town meeting coming up, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
we're going to try to announce that several times tonight. Town meeting is on June
5th.
And
at
what
7 o'clock.
And where?
At the high school auditorium.
High school auditorium. Now, typically, they have a hard time getting people to come.
Quorum is 250 people, so let's see if we can get that number. I don't know if everybody remembers, I had made a prediction that with some of the articles that are on town meeting warrant, that we were going to have more people at town meeting than voted in the town election.
That's very true.
So that's a possibility, but we
how
need 590 people to be at town meeting.
Can you believe it? And we will have...
That's considerable. Everybody can be seated in the auditorium. It holds 750 people.
It'll never happen. We'll be lucky to get 250.
Well, that's possibly true. There is an article, a second to last article is for a feasibility study for a Campbell school.
Yeah, right. So that's important.
That's important. So I think that may bring out quite a few people.
And we're going to get into those articles very shortly, but what we wanted to do is start the show off with the issue that's happening up on Betty Ann Lane. Or Betty Ann, is it Lane?
Yes.
I think it is
Betty
Lane.
Ann
Yeah,
Lane,
it's
yeah.
Betty Ann Lane. I've been by there several times recently, and it's quite interesting. We have a couple of pictures, and we have a couple of videos to show. We're going to start off with Nate hooking us up with the CBS video. Mm-hmm. That's Channel 4 did a report on it, and then we'll lead into our video that will give you some insight as to what is happening here in Dracut. Take it away, Nate.
A Dracut man's ambitious backyard project is causing controversy in town. Neighbors call the volleyball court a nuisance and want something to be done.
But the town says its hands are mostly tied in the case. WBZ's Paul Burton brings us the story, all new at 6.
I just want to be nice with everybody.
Flavio Granda Orbi says he wants to have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend with his family and friends with his new volleyball and soccer courts he built in his backyard at his home in Dracut.
I want to say to them, like, I don't do nothing wrong. I just want to have fun with the friends, with the little kids. They always come.
Flavio says the vision behind this project is because his backyard was so spacious, he thought it'd be a great idea for neighbors and friends to come together for some friendly games. What he didn't anticipate was some of the competition from several neighbors who don't appreciate some of the commotion that is causing.
We as a neighborhood, and there's quite a few people here, and
James Martin lives right behind Flavio's home. He and other neighbors voiced their strong opposition at a town hall meeting back in April.
It's an outright nuisance, okay? They've got stadium lighting that shines right into my kitchen windows at 9:45 at night.
Has he done anything wrong?
At this point, he needs to update his and deal with the electrical permit issues that he does have. Okay. So he's been asked not to put the lights on until he fixes that problem, and he's done that. So he's been very cooperative.
His court is entirely fenced in. He lowered the lights and is willing to comply with all town regulations.
I think that they should just be left alone.
Anea lives in the house next door to Flavio and says she and her family are not bothered by the house parties.
I was home one night and they had like a party going on. They had a lot of cars. It wasn't a disturbance. It's never something that's to the point where we feel like we need to make a noise complaint.
Flavio hopes his neighbors will allow him to celebrate his culture without being a disturbance. Are you upset about this?
Yes, and a little nervous because my little kids, they're nervous too.
All we want to do is go back up there and live in peace and quiet.
We want the neighbors to all get along.
In Dracut, I'm Paul Burton, WBZ News.
So as you can see, there are quite a few neighbors up there that have been having an issue with this. And some of the issues that have been going on, Phil, are like the lighting and whatever.
Light, noise, and certainly traffic, the additional traffic.
Traffic.
I think a number of 100 cars has been, I think I've heard quoted, certainly more than, in that realm. I mean, you have 100 or so people there, you're going to have more than 5 cars.
Now, Betty Ann Lane is kind of like a circular, it goes into a circular type of a community area where you drive around the whole circle. This house is all around that circle, and they're in the middle of this circle, and they have a lot of space that has been dedicated, as you saw in that piece, Richard, to a soccer field type. Well, it's pavement soccer, and it's also for volleyball. Have you been up by there?
So I did drive around the neighborhood. I didn't locate where the actual soccer field was because I believe you had to look through a fence to see it, and it was kind of raining, so I wasn't able to see it. But does zoning have anything to do with them being able to have a soccer field? Because would that count as recreation, I guess, is my question?
Well, you can have your property. You can do a soccer field that's used for your family and friends.
Yeah, but when you're going on Facebook advertising it to hundreds of people to show up and you're bringing in teams from across the state, from across the region, where's the line in the sand?
The issue is that it's a residential area and it can't be used for commercial purposes. Now, there is speculation that this gentleman is using this as a way to raise money, and he's got several sheds on the property that he stores drinks in, whatever kind of drinks it might be. We're not sure if it's alcoholic beverages or not, and that he's selling those beverages to the teams that come in. And as you'll see in our next piece, which is about 5 minutes long, and I think you need to watch it to get a gist of what's going on up there, because Tony Archinsky really puts it into a nutshell pretty good as well. But the manager kind of explains it. But when the neighborhood first went up there about 4 months ago, the manager seemed to be more sympathetic towards the neighborhood than she is today. So, Nate, why don't you play that piece? That goes for about 5 minutes and 20 seconds.
Detective Brian Gaff, 104 Betty Ann. I'm an attorney, and I'm speaking on behalf of a number of Betty Ann Lane residents. I'm here tonight to request some updates from the town that give us an update to what activities have taken place since the issuance of the May 11th letter or memorandum.
Yes, I did send out a memorandum on May 11th indicating what happened over there. All of the code enforcement team, including public safety, explained further the complaints came in beginning on April 26th and apparently still exist today. The town took immediate action, and the health and building inspectors issued a cease and desist order. The property has a significant amount of pavement that is marked to accommodate soccer and volleyball. There are 2 sheds on the property, one of which is directly related to the activities, and there is also a portable toilet. That said, staff found no evidence of any business transactions. It should be noted that the staff observed several other residents in the neighborhood that also had portable toilets. Cease and desist orders were issued, the first being the Board of Health. The purpose of this order was to ensure that if there was food being served, that it was safe and the regulations were being addressed. The building inspector has been in there several times. The purpose of his cease and desist was to address concerns regarding the installation of the lighting fixtures without the proper permit and inspections. Property owner has been cooperative and has been working with the building inspector too. The building inspector and the electrical inspecting are going out there tomorrow afternoon to do another inspection and probably issue another cease and desist order. Once the lights have been inspected, the homeowner will be allowed to use the lights as any other homeowner would be on their property.
The sheds, there are 2 sheds, one of which is the primary one used to store beverages and various food items and to meet code requirements. Again, we find no sale of food happening. We had no evidence of a cash register or any kind of. The pavement is approximately 5,600 square feet. Stormwater issue will have to be addressed. The stormwater manager, Tina Ravad, is working with the owners to rectify that. She has issued a letter of direction. I will get the noise with a large number of participants. There is a possibility that there could be continued noise. The deputy chief did speak to the homeowner regarding this. With that said, the deputy chief stated that his staff has found no violations of the noise ordinance. There are no public safety concerns with respect to the volume of traffic to be resolved by the police department and the installation of signs and other signage to control the traffic. In summary, it is the opinion of the code enforcement team that the resident is cooperating in obtaining any permits and inspections required. There is no evidence to support the claim of a business being operated at the residential location. The town has no jurisdictions unless there are public safety and noise concerns. Unless we receive or discover evidence of commercial business being operated at this address, the town has no jurisdiction to limit the number of visitors the property owners have.
You've heard from the town manager that we've investigated the other health issues and other building code violations, and none of which appear to be evident at this time. The exception, of course, is the existing lights and the need for permit for that electrical work. Once that is completed, then we're back to the main question, if you will, of whether or not a zoning violation is in place.
I happen to go by there Sunday afternoon, and in my mind, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is organized sports happening. They had referees with uniforms on. They had players with uniforms on. Somebody brought to my attention the Facebook page that this gentleman runs, where he's inviting people that he doesn't even know to come and play sports in his backyard. And I did see more than 20 cars. I saw about 30 cars there on Sunday afternoon. Let's take, for example, the stormwater. So this guy builds a court and doesn't go by our stormwater regulations, and why aren't we telling him to take it out?
Well, we are.
Okay.
I mean, the stormwater issue is being dealt with.
And then in the process of doing that, who's going to pay for the engineering and the computation, of what should go there? I mean, he certainly isn't going to want to take it out. Are we working towards allowing him to keep that if he meets stormwater regulations?
He meets the stormwater regulations and requirements, yes, he's allowed to have pavement.
So the best thing that we can look at here is the fact that it is an organized sports. I don't think it matters whether he's selling anything. I don't think it matters whether it's a commercial enterprise. This guy's inviting people he doesn't know in his backyard and is a nuisance to the entire neighborhood. Something has to be done. You bring a judge to see that, what I saw on Sunday, and there's no doubt in my mind that this guy needs a park to do what he's doing in his backyard. And just
So, as you can see, Phil, there's some issues up there. And it seems as though the town is not reticent to pursue it quick enough for the neighborhood, in my view.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, whether they're leery of getting into litigation, although it seems weird that they'll get into litigation for retribution purposes, but they won't get into litigation to protect a neighborhood.
Yeah. So the neighbors up there who have lived in quiet and peace for many, many years now have an activity going on that obviously has upset the whole apple cart up there, right? So if you lived next door to that, Richard, would you be upset?
I would be enraged.
Right.
And it seems interesting to me that where the town's about to ask the people of Dracut to do something mind-boggling, which we're going to get into later on, it amazes me they wouldn't side with the residents in this. It seems that they're actually trying to go around the issue by saying it's okay to have pavement in your yard, it's okay to have a soccer match in your yard, and it's okay to do this and that, but they're not putting it all together.
Which it is okay. You can have barbecues every weekend. You can have people over. The key is what Tony Archinsky said.
When you advertise it.
Yeah, when you advertise it and they're coming in and their uniforms and what have you, and I'm not beyond believing that those teams are paying an entry fee. Would you believe that? Would you think?
To be honest, even if they're not, it's still a commercial enterprise.
Right.
In a residential zone.
So when she says when the manager says there's no public safety issues there, well, that isn't what the neighborhood thinks.
Well, I mean, so from a building point of view, I mean, it's established that he installed lights without a permit, without a licensed electrician. So, I mean, that becomes a safety hazard right there. Now, nobody has connected the fact that by trade he is a contractor. So he knows that building permits are required. He's a roofer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
When you're re-roofing, you need to get a building permit for it.
How many roofers do you know?
Most of the ones they
who
do.
are legit.
That's right. So
the one on Memorial Day that's tearing a roof off, is he legit?
He should be. He should be, and I wouldn't hire him otherwise. But to now claim ignorance of, I didn't know I needed a building permit,
That's your job.
It flies in the face of a contractor because they know.
Yeah.
Now we know contractors who have done work without building permits.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And again, it creates problems.
Yeah. So when you're saying that you're inviting, as Tony aptly pointed out, you're inviting. Would you invite somebody over your house that you didn't know?
Absolutely.
Hey, we're having a barbecue, Richard. Let's have some of anybody, somebody from Lowell, just put it in there. I'm having a barbecue, and come on over.
I get concerned when one person is there that I don't know, and I find out who brought him.
That's right.
Who brought her, and who are they?
Yeah, exactly.
But to have hundreds of people, no, I'm sorry. There's a line somewhere, and frankly, they crossed it.
Exactly. So what we need to do is, get to the root of this, and it doesn't seem as though they're acting quick enough, in my view. They said they did a cease and desist order on the lights, and supposedly he's cooperating with the issue and not using the lights, but they're still up.
They're still up. As far as I know, they're still connected to the main panel. There's been no order to disconnect them, which there should have been.
So put us through the process, Phil, in your experience. If somebody puts something up illegally and the town decides that you need to take it down.
A course of action would be that the building commissioner would issue with the cease and desist order, and then he would order that materials to be removed from the project.
Okay, so what's the next step if that person doesn't comply?
It would be getting a court order.
So you have to go to court for it.
Unfortunately, everything you do these days, you need to probably go to court.
Yeah.
But that would be then remanded through the courts. Any work that was done is not code compliant, so all that work would need to come out anyway. Because how can you inspect it, and how could you give it an okay inspection at this point?
So
that I've heard that the wiring is not a proper wiring for underground or cabled or in a conduit to protect it.
So it's laying on the ground.
Laying on the ground or in the ground,
Wow.
and it's not the proper wiring for that.
So somebody can get seriously hurt with that stuff.
Absolutely, and the house could burn down.
Yeah. So that neighborhood is looking at months, if not years, before this is resolved.
Could be.
And the stormwater issue of putting the pavement down. We've heard a lot about stormwater over the last few years, particularly when the Board of Selectmen, under the last regime with Jesse Forcier and those guys, they tried to jam through a stormwater bill, and that went down, a stormwater tax, and that went down in flames. But what is entailing in the stormwater? So if somebody put a 55-foot, square foot of pavement in their backyard.
So typically, you would probably do some sort of swale to help recharge it back into the soil, so it collects during a rainstorm and then it percolates back into the.
Okay, so what is the stormwater issue?
I'm not exactly sure, other than the amount of pavement that now creates a large impervious area within the lot.
What would mitigate that if you're a business and you have a large parking lot.
So typically they would do it with a detention or retention pond. A detention slows the rate of water percolating into the soil. A retention pond holds the water.
Okay.
So typically they are used to essentially drain off any impervious surface and hold and percolate the water back into the
So stormwater mitigation is it mostly an environmental thing?
It would be.
It's an environmental thing. So they want to protect the environment by not having all those oils or whatever comes down, acid rain that goes into the soil and starts hurting the environment itself. And that's why it would be directed to a pond and keep the keep the area.
Sometimes they do
affected.
drainage structures, which are catch basins. They can help control some of the oils and stuff. It's not a parking lot, so you're really not going to get a lot of oils, although bituminous pavement or hot top does have oil in it.
Yeah.
They can be directed into what they refer to as a 4-bay system, where it can naturally leach out the oils into particular vegetation.
So Richard, in your experience, as you've been watching this evolve with the Board of Selectmen, where do you think it's heading?
Personally, I would like to see a cease and desist order put in immediately. Is that going to happen? I don't know. Personally, I think it's going to drag on a lot longer than it needs to, and that we're going to see it on the news at least 2 or 3 more times before action is taken. You know, I am happy to announce that at What's Happening Dracut, we have an investigation underway. I won't give details, but I hatched a plan, and hopefully we're going to clear up some of the rumors going on about the place.
Yeah. So we're going to keep an eye on that stuff. And do we have anything else that we want to add to this? I will say that, you know, Tony Archinsky and Heather Santiago Hutchins asked some very important questions. And if you get a chance, you ought to go back and watch that meeting and hear the whole thing, because we can only give you a few minutes of it here. But the bottom line is we're in support of that neighborhood to try to, you want to live in peace and harmony, and you want to have a good mix of what's going on in the neighborhood without disturbing your neighbors that have been there for a lifetime, that really don't want activities on weekends that disturb their peace and quiet over the course of you know, the summer particularly. So
hey, that Betty Ann Lane might be a place that we can host our fireworks, if not this year, the next year.
Maybe. That's a good idea. And by the way, that fireworks issue is still percolating among the different coffee gatherings at different coffee shops and McDonald's. There are some people really concerned about that, and we're going to try to keep an eye on that. And we'll probably be there on the 4th on that date to see what's going on and how it's handled. But the next issue we have, folks, is an issue that is quite interesting because it also involves another type of activity within a neighborhood that is causing a stir, and that's the Sandbar Beach Club and Grill, which is located at 39 Elm Street. It's in Tingsboro, but it's right on the line, right? And
the town line runs right through the middle of the building.
Okay, so now that particular building used to be Shoreline Restaurant, so many people might not know it as the Sandbar, correct?
That's correct.
We have a picture of that.
And
Nate,
prior
if
to
you
that,
have it, can you put it up?
Prior to that, it was the Fleur de Lis.
Yeah.
So some may remember it as the Fleur de Lis.
Okay, so this is on Long Pond?
Correct.
All right. So the neighborhood is complaining because there's loud music, parking is all over the place. There's only one street to get in there with no sidewalks, and the street is pretty rough to begin with. And for whatever reason, years ago, the town of Dracut took over the licensing of that building. Why would they do that, Phil?
My understanding is that the town of Tingsboro didn't want to deal with it because essentially both towns needed to deal with it, and Tingsboro relinquished it all to Dracut for licensing of alcohol only.
So at what point can the town turn around and say, let's give that licensing effort back to Tingsboro?
I think they could do that at any point for a vote of the selectmen. Hey, we're not dealing with this anymore.
Right. So, I mean, are there any residents over there that are actually Dracut residents?
There are, I think, 6 residents that are kind of beyond the Sandbar.
Have they been up there complaining?
I believe they have.
Okay, so we have a little investigative piece on that also. You can play that now, Nate, and then we'll come back in about 5 minutes.
Pelletier, 25 Elm Ave. I've been emailing. I don't know if this is the place where I'm supposed to speak, but I have been emailing Allison about some issues that I've been experiencing over at the Sandbar Beach Club. We currently are, this time last year I was hopeful. I was hopeful for change. I'm not seeing the change that I thought was in front of us. Having my daughter find a person on the beach was shocking. Watching them walk back to the sandbar, then finding a man stumbling down the street, and then a 15-person brawl in my lawn. My neighborhood's changed. I have plenty of documentation, but I'm kept up late at night, and I'm having a problem. I think some of the other neighbors are, prior to this meeting, they may have other issues as well. So those are my experience, my problems that I'm having. I'm really concerned about my daughter's safety. That's all. Thank you.
I'm here to support Jill. Jill is a nightmare. It's a nightmare at her house. She's not even telling you half of it, and my heart breaks for her. It's just not fair. We keep talking about it being a business. If it is a business, you should not have given it a club liquor license. It's not zoned for business, it's in the middle of a neighborhood, and you can't put a liquor license there. So I live 4 houses away, and I am still hearing the singing in my house. There is no way, if there's just an acoustic guitar and a little speaker or whatever, that I would be hearing in my house. He's not running like that, and it's not fair to us, and it's especially not fair to Jill. Thank you.
So the Sandbar, we have had several complaints over the past few weeks. We did go through the police department complaints, and from 4/15 to present, there have been 12, 13, 16, 19 visits by the Dracut Police Department and a few from Tingsboro. One of the complaints was concerned that the resident provided a video of the footage that showed unwanted individuals on their property. It's assumed that the individuals were from the Sandbar. That's an assumption that we can't make, and unless we, I believe gathering and speaking with the chief, yeah, there was some issues there, and it's possible that the people that were on his property were from the Sandbar, but we can't prove that, so it's not something that we can hold our hat on. But all of the visits and the activity over there, it certainly would warrant, I would think, at some point, a discussion going, a more detailed discussion with the owners.
So my question would be, one second please, my question would be, considering the volume of complaints that we've received, how long are we going to continue to receive them until we have that discussion? Thank you. Selectman Archinsky.
I guess my first question is, do we need a motion, because it's not on the agenda, for a show cause hearing, or can you just do that as the town manager?
I don't.
My preference is for the board to receive a formal complaint, typically from the police department, and a request for a show cause hearing. That's usually how it appears as an agenda item for your discussion, and then vote to convene that show cause hearing, which may take, of course, an additional meeting.
We certainly can do that.
Just so you know, I don't believe for 1 minute that that guy's running a private club. I don't think anybody in the room does either. I don't know how many more complaints we need before we have a show cause hearing.
Well, and that's what we're doing, right? Yeah. We're discussing when we're going to have a show cause hearing. So
right.
The system works.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I agree with Mr. Dracut. We will be doing that at our next meeting.
Madam Chair, one more, Town Council. We requested that Ann give us a report on the Sandbar at our last meeting.
Yes.
Wouldn't that...
Does that qualify enough to...
Does that qualify as...
Well, again, you're the license holder. You're entitled to notice and hearing of
Yes.
show cause. Right now, all we have is an oral report. We don't have any police reports that substantiate any of those complaints.
I believe we do.
So we do not have a liquor inspection officer. The way that the liquor inspections are handled is the code enforcement team does a liquor inspection once a year before the liquor license are issued. We do not have the staff.
We would have to have it on the agenda in order to request that they come in.
To take up the question of whether or not you would ask for a show cause hearing.
So we're back, folks. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about there. Richard, you had a question off here.
Yes, I did. So if Tingsboro relinquished everything to Dracut and we retain the liquor license, who gets the revenue from the taxes?
Well, the obviously the sales tax and everything is taken by Dracut.
I believe so.
Correct? I think that the property tax is probably 50-50.
I see.
Well, it would be split amongst
the two towns?
The two towns, depending on where the property lines fall.
Right. And it would be proportionately charged for whichever town. But I think the revenues can't be that much. Can it? I mean, is it in the 50 grand range?
I don't know.
But I mean, the headaches over there are certainly not worth the 50 grand. Or whatever it is. And I'm just throwing that number out. I don't know if that's a true number. Kevin Telly said that he chimed in and he said that place has been there for years. Yes, it has. But for the most part, it was a club. So now, is it a club or is it a business?
So when it operated as the Fleur de Lis, it was a club.
It mostly were operated as a club.
Then it became...
and you had to be a member
correct.
And pay a membership dues to be part of that club.
Right.
And then you would launch a boat, and the bar was there, and you could do different things, right? So that a club license is quite obvious, and I'm sure the ABCC questioned this.
Well, yes, because the club has to operate as a nonprofit organization.
So what's nonprofit about this?
Well, I've often heard that nonprofit is just a tax status.
Right. So even the ABCC, which is the Alcoholic Beverage Commission, is kind of acquiescing to the wishes of the town, and the town really gave them a liquor license, right?
Yeah.
Based on that. So do they need to issue a liquor license there? Well, just pull the liquor license. What happens to the business without a liquor license?
It's certainly operating as a restaurant, it really couldn't work.
It couldn't work without that unless you had a BYOB, bring your own beer.
Correct.
You know, John, Kevin made an interesting comment. He said, Dracut approves sale and transfer of license, then complains that it's theirs.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. However, I would debate that because we approved of that, back in, I don't even know, the 80s?
Oh, yeah.
When it was the
Fleur de
Fleur de
Lis was approved many years ago.
To me, that's almost like saying, and I don't mean this as a wise comment,
Yeah.
to me that's like saying, well, we approved of the WPA to build a road in Dracut back in 42, and now we regret doing it.
Yeah.
You know, at some point,
Doesn't mean
things
you can't change
and things exactly.
You can
and
change it.
circumstance changes. And if they're complaining that there aren't any police reports, right, why don't they do a Dragnet Joe Friday in Camden type of thing and go out there one night, plain clothes, go in with a camera or something and figure it out?
So the liquor license is issued by the licensing authority, which is the Dracut Board of Selectmen. So, Phil, there was a lot of discussion there on that particular meeting, on that particular section, about whether or not they had the right to make a motion at that meeting to call for a show cause hearing. And the open meeting laws are used negatively a lot in Dracut as a way to stymie debate and stymie stuff by saying and putting it out to the future. So I think the attorney was wrong, and I'm not an attorney. I only make believe I am one once in a while. But I think I know the open meeting law is pretty good. And as you know, Phil, that any subject that comes up can come up as long as the board of a whole and the chairman didn't know that the issue was going to arise, and a motion comes out of that can be acted upon.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So the attorney is always going to say, well, let's put it off to the next meeting. In the meantime, that poor neighborhood is putting up with this for months and months and months.
Yeah.
When the authority can be pushing for a hearing 2 months down the line.
And if you really wanted to be proactive about it, why not send the owner of the Sandbar an invitation. Please come to the Board of Selectmen. We've had a number of complaints, and we'd like to talk with you.
doesn't have to
It's not a show cause hearing, but we need to talk with you.
Yeah, there's no reason why they can't do that. But the open meeting laws, I mean, in Joe DeRocco, I don't agree often with him, but he was right on that, and I think he was leading down that road, that this was a part of, this has been a part of a report weekly or monthly from the manager, and it's been in discussion. There's no reason why they couldn't come up with a...
Yeah, so Rob Shepard chimed in, and he brings up what would appear to be a valid point. The liquor license is best kept by Dracut for the safety of Dracut residents. My only issue with that is that a Dracut resident can't get to the Sandbar unless he goes through Tingsboro.
Correct.
Or if he travels by boat.
Right. What my question to Rob is, what's the advantage of having that liquor license, other than the revenues?
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes complaints are sent over to Tingsboro, the police, by Tingsboro residents, that's where they die, because the police in Tingsboro say, not our circus, not our monkeys.
I mean, my question for Rob would be, with that comment, is does he believe that Tingsboro is more lenient with their liquor licenses?
I don't even know. But the other issue is, how many Dracut residents have really been affected by all this commotion up there? It's mostly Tingsboro, right? Mostly Tingsboro.
Like I said, there are about 6 houses that are actually in Dracut that are further beyond the Sandbar.
That go beyond it.
That go beyond
So those people are affected by the traffic issues and everything else also.
And the sound and stuff like that. But the majority of that neighborhood is in Tingsboro.
So it's a flip no matter what you do. It's not going to be a fun thing going on over there at all, right? But the enforcement is obviously before the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, and ultimately all you want is for the Sandbar to be a good neighbor. They said they would be a good neighbor.
Right. And I mean, it looks like that, the manager is, protecting the police. The police are doing their job. I mean, the woman said there was a fight on her front lawn involving about 15 people, right? Now, by the time the police get there, the fight's over, but there's video. So the manager said during the meeting, well, we don't have any proof that those people came from the Sandbar. The video shows.
Well, I don't think they just walked up and picked her lawn.
The video shows them walking from the Sandbar to the, to the place.
John, don't you know about the AI altering videos and stuff? That's not trustworthy.
The other issue is that neighbors now who are friendly with the Sandbar, and I believe, and I don't know this to be true or not, but in my opinion, neighbors are allowing people who are going to the club to park in their driveways
for a small fee.
Yeah, I believe there's a fee involved, or there's some kind of remuneration going back to the neighbor that's allowing that to happen. And of course, money talks and everything else walks, right? So what else is there any other issues on that we're waiting to see? Here's another issue that neighborhood's going to have to put up with for some time to come, right? And that's a shame. There is also an issue going on at Everybody's Bar on 550 Textile Ave in Dracut. Did you hear about that one?
I did not.
Did you hear about that one?
I have not.
So show us the picture that we have there, Nate. So apparently the issue here, this is the grand opening. As you can see, the manager is in the picture, the assistant town manager, Allison Genest is in the picture, and others. Joe DiCarlo is in that. Is Jen Kopczynski in that?
And there's
I don't see Jen in that.
Yep, there's Jen and Victor as well.
Yeah, so they're there, and I guess what's going on over there's been several calls to that place about loud noise, parking, fights or something going on inside the building, and that's another issue to be watched over the next few months, because that's going to be an issue also.
Yeah, so they're new owners. I figure when the ownership was transferred.
Yeah.
But back before that, it was essentially if you want to call it a sleepy neighborhood bar.
Have you ever been in that bar?
To be honest, I have not.
That bar is smaller than this studio, and it has a horseshoe bar and an offside room that has pool tables in it. I don't know if you can put 100 people in that bar. I don't know if you can put 50 people in that bar. And they're advertising all over the place for all kinds of different activities going on there. They have a women's night. They have all kinds of stuff. You might be able to, maybe you can pull that up later in the show. But right now we're going to go on to Michelle made a comment too. You have that, Phil?
Yeah, I will say parking is an issue over there, but it's a very nice bar inside.
So is she talking about the Everybody's Bar? I imagine.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably. Hey, look, I'm going to tell you this up front. I've been to the Sandbar Beach Club, and I've eaten there. The food is good. I mean, if they can't regulate themselves by, fixing the issues with the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that the bar has been there for many, many, many years as a club and as a somewhat of a business type thing. But if they can't get along, then something has to happen there. And I mean, the business owner has to be more amenable to the neighborhood.
Absolutely. Again, when they go in front of the Board of Selectmen or the Planning Board, some of the first things they were saying, we want to be a good neighbor. It's like, well, it's time to be a good neighbor.
Right. And a show cause hearing will determine whether or not you are being a good neighbor, and would add stipulations to it that would more constrict what they're doing up there.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the issues is the noise. I mean, decibels of music on the beach.
Yep.
I know they can't serve liquor on the beach, from what I understand.
Well, I think they're not supposed to, but I think they may be, which is another issue.
That's another issue, exactly. So the next issue we have, folks, and we're running over time here on a lot of this stuff, but we're moving right along. The next issue we have is Dracut's tri-board. What was the purpose of the tri-board, Phil? Do you remember?
If I'm allowed to say it, is it a bitch session?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure, other than to kind of complain.
Who's the tri-board?
So it would be Board of Selectmen, School Committee, and Finance Committee.
So, believe it or not, Phil, that particular type of a committee was set up when I was on the board also. We did it mostly to try to get a grab and a control on finances so that we could know what was going on 3 to 5 years out. And they actually have met before now, and that it consists of the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the School Committee, and they share information about their budgets, so all of the parties that have to present at town meeting have knowledge as to all the budgets and what's going on in those budgets. And what this particular committee is charged with doing is figuring out what the future holds on the budget. So we just had an election recently, right? And one of the candidates
wasn't me.
No, it wasn't you. You weren't a candidate. But Allison Janess, who's the chairman, and she touted about how great things are in the town. We're going to show that video.
We have that right here.
We're going to show that video
on the
right
Teflon
now.
laptop.
On the Teflon laptop. And we're going to talk about what she believed was going well with the town, and then we're going to talk about the tri-board.
Okay, if we can pull.
Dracut is in great shape right now, and we need to make sure we stay on the right track. I'm Allison Janest, and I'm running for re-election to the Dracut Board of Selectmen. We have strong leadership at Town Hall. Town finances are in good condition, and capital improvement projects are being tackled all over town. I'm asking for your vote to keep the positive momentum. As a selectman, in collaboration with my colleagues and the town manager, I've worked to keep Dracut affordable, strengthen planning and oversight, and to support our firefighters and our police officers. I've been an independent voice, and I focused on getting results. At my first meeting as a selectman, I kept my campaign promise, and I brought forward a proposal for the design and implementation of an annual goal-setting process for town government. That process helps guide the town's success. In addition to providing high-level direction for the town manager and her team, as well as ensuring that everyone's working toward the same objectives, that process provides absolute transparency for our taxpayers around what our government is doing, why our government is doing it, and how we're doing it to keep Dracut moving forward. For the last 2 years, I've had the
So the key to this whole thing is she ran on the fact, and it ended up, she had no opposition. And,
No.
And Heather Santiago also ran, but Heather did not produce a video like this that says everything is good.
Sunshine and lollipops, rainbows and
everything was just going so well, and her husband has that show that sells, the naysayers like that other show and our show like to say things about, the negativity in the town. Well, the problem is the negativity in the town is there because you don't tell the truth. You're just saying things to get reelected. I'm saying that you're an individual when she's part of the 3-person cabal that controls the old board, is beyond the pale, right? The retribution towards DATV is part of it. We've seen that. Let's show the tri-board meeting now. We have about 5 minutes in the tri-board meeting, but this was a May election. This video came out the end of January, around January, whatever, and because she was gearing up to run.
Correct.
And so
and the tri-board happens at the end of May.
And they were meeting in between too. Was the manager informing the board of what the future holds, like happened at the last tri-board meeting? Put that up.
Over to Ann and Victor to talk about our projected 1, 3, and 5-year budgets for the town. And
Thank you. So I gave you guys 2 separate documents. One is excluding the developments on tap, and also one without the developments. But just to give you an overview of what we're facing in the next few years. So we have a number of subdivisions that are coming online. Most of them are 3 bedrooms, but they're also not huge. The biggest one that we're concerned about is Murphy's Farm, obviously. We have not received official submissions on that, so even at that rate, we don't have a lot to... typically, if there's 3 bedrooms, there's going to be more children involved. The more we can put 2 bedrooms in or condos, it makes it more appealing for us with respect to the number of kids. I basically went through all of the revenues and expenditures based on the FY24 budget. FY24 budget, we're solid there. We're in good shape. I don't expect that to continue. 90%, honestly, of most of these expenses are salary. We don't have a whole lot of room in individual budgets. And then below, in the gray area, I have built into that additional exempt debt, which would cover the school construction, as well as the DPW space. I'm assuming it would be a debt exclusion. Of course, all of these have to go to the ballot and go through the process that needs to happen. The next one is the including developments. So these are the additional expenses we're estimating, assuming that all of these developments come through and we have an extra 300 kids. Along with that, we expect that we will need a Station 4 for the fire department, which is about $10 million, a ladder truck of about $2 million, a pumper about $1 million. All of those would come through as debt, as normal debt, conventional debt, I would assume, and we expect that to kick in around 2027. Public Works. So Public Works, with new homes and new roads comes more needs. So we would have to bring in more equipment with an estimated cost between $440,000 and $500,000 over the next 5 years. Additional revenues that we may see that will offset some of the expenses. So for FY25 and 26, it's strictly just value revenue from the new construction. 27 through 30 includes, through 29 includes the debt exclusions for the new buildings. So unfortunately, in the end, with or without the developments, we're looking at about a 2.1 to up to a $4.5 million deficit from FY25 through FY29, and then with the developments, we're looking at 2.2 as well, up to 7.3 million. I have no desire to impact public safety or education. So if there is a need for us to make cuts, if we don't have the revenues to support it, it will be other departments. It will not be public safety and education. We've come so far on both sides of the table that we don't want to go backwards. And it's not good for the town to go backwards. It's just not in the best interest of the town to go backwards. We have a whole new demographic coming into town. We have the population is skyrocketing, businesses are coming in. There's a lot going on.
Just from the education side,
we're budgeting at 100% of net school spending. There is no cutting to have. We have to spend the minimum.
If there's nothing to cut, then where do you come up with $2 million?
You have to come up with a revenue source. It's the only solution, or you close departments. But I know the board of selectmen have a goal of no new fees. And
I guess for me, I would just need to understand what the options are. I can't.
new fees or an override.
But there's no fees, so the only other option.
No, the
is an
increased
override.
fees, but you could do a combination of both.
If I could just add to the old word, you know, I think a lot of people don't understand that we're also responsible to the taxpayer. And in my own experience as being a selectman for the last 10 years, I have supported every single operational override that has come before this town. I think there were 3 of them for operations, and the taxpayers just do not have an appetite for it. And I quite frankly don't think that the demographics of the town have changed all that much since the last one went down in flames.
So do they have an appetite for us laying off employees?
My question.
Then what do we do?
Yes.
Because sitting here with a $2 million deficit up to a $7 million deficit isn't, like, the town, like...
It's going to collapse.
So you heard a lot. There was a lot of information over there, and it isn't even close to being what really was discussed that night. So you should go look at that tri-board meeting and get the real gist of it. And we only took out a little portions of it. And so, to be fair, that video was cut up so that we can get some individual comments in from different people to see, so you could see the issues they're facing. And you know, I have the spreadsheets that the manager presented that show over the next 5 years, starting with 25, where you have, without all that development of the nearly 900 units of affordable housing. Phil, what's the difference between affordable housing and low-income housing?
So affordable housing has to deal with the median income of a particular area. We're associated with Lowell, so it's I think 80% of that median income qualifies as low income or affordable.
So low income is like 30% versus 80%.
Correct.
So affordable really isn't that affordable.
No.
And how many of those units will be affordable?
25%.
25%. So if there's 100 units built,
right, 25 will be,
and the other
affordable,
will be market rate.
It will be market rate, and they're not going to give up additional market rate for affordable.
Right, and the issue will be that those 2 to 3 to 4 bedroom apartments bring in children, mostly children, right? So the average is how many per unit?
Two, maybe?
Maybe 2.
I mean,
so,
most families are no more than 4.
Right. So if you have 900 of them times 2.
So that's 1,800. We were kind of going over this the show earlier before we started. The population in Dracut shows that of the some almost 6,000 residents that are between the ages of 5 and 18, only about half of them go through the Dracut school system.
Right.
So if you're saying that, okay, there are, in theory, another 1,800 students or children in these houses, logistically, only half of those will be going to
So that's
schools.
900 kids, right? Approximately. And if you watch
and they're not all in one grade.
No, exactly. So, you know, when you watch that video, you'll hear the superintendent said, "You're going to give me a heart attack based on those numbers," right? Because right now you're talking about building a new school, and these projections have that new school, I believe, in it. They're talking about the debt exclusion.
So the feasibility study will certainly take into account the possibility of these projects being approved and added to the rolls, and then adding, of course, to the school population. The MSBA will do those formulas.
So without these buildings, without any new development, and we know that's not going to happen, maybe not all 900 of them are going to be built, but we're going to certainly have a couple hundred over the next few years built in varying 40B forms. So without those buildings, right, the budget can balloon to a deficit from $2 million to $4.4 million. You know what I mean?
Wow.
It can balloon by the year 2029 to be a $4 million deficit. And that would include playing, I hear music. Is this the Titanic?
John, wait a minute, John.
It's near my God.
This isn't really funny, but I mean, it's
Tell
true.
me, seriously, John, we're on the ship. The lifeboats have sailed. The band is playing. Things aren't looking good.
Well, look at, with the developments, that goes from $2.1 million deficit in 2025 to $7.3 million deficit in those.
I'm not sure
years.
how those particular numbers come to be. I mean, I heard Ann talking about how we need to build a fourth fire station.
Right.
But where the stations are located, my understanding the fire department can reach any area in Dracut within 7 minutes.
Right.
So say that Murphy Farms go through and they want to have a fire station, I guess just for Murphy Farm, because where else are you going to put it?
Right.
Logistically, that's kind of foolish. I mean, you may add additional personnel to the Jones Ave fire, which is Station 2, because it's from there. It's a straight shot right down Wheeler Road. So it's not like it's extra travel distance. They can probably reach them within that 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah. The other issue that you mentioned was the DPW is going to need a new building.
There's been talk about a new DPW garage.
Yeah, and there is, this goes to extend how the state and federal government is overextending their reach on environmental issues. It's just the tip of the ice. When you talk about electric vehicles and we talk about switching from oil and gas to fossil fuel, get rid of fossil fuels and going to windmills and all that stuff, that's a whole other show we can have. But the bottom line is, we're talking about now they want to tell you how you clean those particular trucks. Now, I recently heard from somebody in the know that some of the money from COVID was used to purchase incidental expenses like DPW trucks and fire trucks, and they need to be housed somewhere. That's the building we're talking about. And the DPW, the DEP mandates how they need to be washed. So you're going to have a building specifically to wash them, to clean the water off and all of the stuff that gets on those trucks.
Right. You'll have a wash bay dedicated just to the cleaning of those trucks.
And the comment that was here, and I mean, why wasn't there a survey done with the residents whether or not we should buy these trucks and what the ramifications would be down the line? Lowell sent out a survey to what should be used.
As far as the what we're spending COVID money on.
Right, because now the COVID money is a good grab, right?
Yeah.
But it comes with caveats. And now the DEP is telling you, oh yeah, we're giving you the money for these trucks, but now you got to build a building to house these and wash these vehicles and clean them. A Dracut school sent out a survey to see what the population wanted, but no input from anyone was allowed on the town side. And now they have to figure out a remedy, and we are spiraling quickly.
You know, John,
this was a person in the know.
Kevin Tully made a good point. He said, tax the donut and pizza and salons 2% more, and that'll close some of the gap.
Well, Kevin, you're right. A commercial rate tax could help. But the problem in Dracut is, and it's always going to be a problem, is 95% of your tax revenue is generated from single-family homes. And am I right, Phil?
That's correct. So if you're trying to, because of Proposition 2.5, it essentially has to be balanced. You can only raise the levy the 2.5%. So if you're trying to transfer some of the burden to businesses, you have to transfer so much that it would essentially put the business out of business, and you would still see a negligible effect on the residential.
Right. Kevin also thinks that the current building is underused. Do you know that? Did he say that?
The existing DPW garage?
Dracut has underused buildings that they could sell. Oh, that's true. That's
true.
absolutely true. And get those back on the tax rate, expand the tax rate. But in order for you to expand that commercial tax base and to separate the two, you need 20 to 25% of your businesses or tax revenue being generated by commercial.
Absolutely, and for Dracut to move the dial just 1% from the 95 to 94 would take about $50 million worth of development.
Just to move it, how much of a percent?
Just 1%.
4%?
1%.
1%. So $50 million, and we've said this before on our show, a $50 million project like the Arbors, that healthcare particular, what is it called, assisted living thing, and the one that's on Bridge Street.
The assisted living was, I believe, around a $10 million project.
So it's not even...
It's not even that.
Not even given
So the whole development at Loon Hill that Jim Duggan was planning on with the rehab in the back and Circle Health in the front and the Arbors, that whole thing was probably estimated at about $75 million.
Which would have
so that whole thing would have only moved the percentage 1.5.
1.5?
You know,
so you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars worth of development in the commercial side to change it. You're not going to do that with Dunkin' Donuts or Kevin Tully Donut Shop or whatever.
No,
right?
To some degree, you almost need something like a Simon Mall coming in and buying up the Brock's property and saying we're putting in
or as one member
of outlet development,
or as one member of the board of the Finance Committee, Sean Ash alluded to during that whole discussion, which we didn't put in the piece, an electric company, a power generation company was trying to come in maybe 20 years ago, and it got stymied for such a long time. The economy fell out, and then that business went somewhere else, and they're not slated to come back. They were going to go in Brock's. And that was a couple $100 million project.
And
that would have generated.
There was a big payment in lieu of taxes,
up to $5 million a year over the course of the lifetime of that plant.
You know, let me ask you this: in terms of storing DPW vehicles, two buildings, why don't you use the old Collinsville fire station? And B, I don't know if you know this, but underneath Harmony Hall by the high school, that whole basement is a massive storage area with big garage doors and everything.
The Collinsville. The Collinsville.
Yeah, that could barely hold a fire, fire truck.
That's what.
Yeah, but I'm sure you could put a truck or something in it. Really?
So the problem with scattering everything around town, because they're doing that with Beaverbrook Farm.
Yeah.
They're using the squash barn to house some of this equipment and stuff. Is that it's scattered all over the town? That should all be in one area for the DPW.
True, but if it saves us, a few $1 million.
No, it's not going to say. It's not cost effective because as Phil says, you're spreading everything all over the place, and you need the buildings to be in one place. What we need to do is put those buildings back on the tax base. Get rid of the school administration building. That's a major corner with hundreds of thousands of cars going by there weekly that could be developed into a commercial store or something, And I mean, Ann Vandal alluded to the fact that you're not going to get a big box store. You're not going to get a big box store in Dracut because you don't have a major highway coming through.
Correct. So I think Dracut's best hope is essentially, I think, through entertainment. So restaurants and some other entertainment venues that could come and that could draw people in from Lowell onto this side of the river.
Our good friend Trevor Currier, who's on the school committee and at the Masconomet school system, I believe it is, Masco. Yep. He's watching tonight, and he says that his town, Middleton, is facing the same issues as we are. Yeah, we all are. And he asked, what did we hire with COVID money? Did we hire anybody or use any of that money for hiring people? Let's say in the schools, and I think some of it was.
I'm not sure. There was a lot of equipment.
I know that Renee Young was watching. Maybe she can chime in and tell us if anybody was.
Yeah, I don't think they actually hired any personnel that would be long term anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say on that topic, you never want to lay people off. You always want that to be the very last option. And Renee was, and I think it was Alyssa, Might have been both of them.
Right.
We're very adamant about not laying people off if some of them were hired on COVID money. At the end of the day, if I have to choose between 30 employees getting laid off in an override for the town, I'm sorry, but I think I would choose the employees.
Yeah.
Really, I do. Give them an advance notice, let them know what's happening.
You mean layoffs?
Layoffs, correct.
You choose the layoffs.
When you were hired and you knew it was on COVID money, you made that choice. You knew the money wasn't always going to be there.
We haven't touched on it as much as we should have, but the big issue in that room with the tri-board was the O
override.
word.
Yes.
The O word, and they said it a number of times.
Tony would not say it.
The
He
O
just
word.
kept referring
And
to it as
Tony
the
is
O
right.
word.
Tony was a big supporter of 3 operational overrides that went down in flames,
Yep.
right? And he said that during the thing.
Yep.
And many did. I never supported an override for operational expenses, and I never would. And the bottom line is we're taxed enough. I mean, you're taxed for water, you're taxed for sewer, you're taxed for this, you're taxed for that. They're trying to get a wastewater, what we just talked about.
Oh, stormwater.
The stormwater, they wanted to get a fee. They're talking about a trash fee, mattress fees. I mean, how much can a person take, right? You got a CPC fee, right?
Yep. 2% of your
You
real
know,
estate.
it's
I think
not like going to like the DATV fee, because somebody might bring that up. I'm gonna throw that out. That's a product you're buying.
Correct.
You don't get charged for it if you don't buy the product. So it's not.
And you still get to use it.
And you still get to use it.
The product being
Right.
cable.
Right.
Of course.
Being this cable studio. But there was another question brought to me that we're going to be in a $2.5 million hole in 2025, and on which we're talking about the next round of taxes and revenue. And our economic development director, whom I have no issues with in terms of, because I don't believe he's really an economic development director. I believe he's more of a communications director. But he's busy making games for the safety night. What? I mean, you're not. Why aren't you approaching somebody, a trucking company, or somebody to come into town and go into one of those big areas that we have? Talk about along, where Brock's is. Maybe there's something we can put down there.
Jim Duggan, he certainly had his faults, but one of his great benefits was that he knew how to shake trees.
Yeah. And Rob Shepard chopped in and said that schools kept hiring with recurring revenues, which is a good thing.
So I would like, I was watching the tri-board, and I think towards the end, Ann Vandal had made a statement regarding some reasoning of why we're in this position.
Right.
And she said that and I have to tend to agree with her, that it started when Proposition 2.5 was enacted, that Dracut kept its levy low at that point, where all the other communities were raising their levies to get the ceiling up high, not taxing it out, but getting the levy up high so they could draw from that at a later date. Dracut never had that high ceiling.
No. And right now, the levy limit is almost to 100% spending every dollar you come in. Right now,
I would say it is effectively 100%.
Yeah, because you get $7,000 left in the till.
Right. It's effectively 100%.
Right. So what they should have been doing over the years, putting 10% of that levy limit, raising it up, and not taxing to the limit.
Other than I suppose they needed the money because everything was always cut so razor thin.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we started off, we were just too low.
Yep. So folks, we have real issues, and for the life of me, I'm waiting for Allison Janess to apologize to the Dracut public on why she said our finances are in good shape when we're facing over the course of the next 5 years a potential $7 million deficit that's going to that is going to reduce to an override that's probably going to go down in flames.
I don't know. Does it sound like the library gets closed again? I mean, that was a real hard time.
Do you believe demographics have changed that much? That people are going to?
They haven't. They really haven't.
Because even if that's true, how did we get 500 people to an election?
Yeah.
If they cared about this stuff.
Yeah, the demographics in Dracut really have not changed.
And we're going to have a hard time getting people to the town meeting, which we're going to be a segue into our town meeting. before we get to that town meeting, by the way, good news, Bruce Cody got reappointed to the CPC board this past week. And one of the things that we should be thinking about too is maybe it's time, if we're going to ask, if at all there's going to be an attachment to raise revenues through an override, maybe it's time to get rid of the CPC fee.
I would think that everything is going to have to be on the table.
All right.
I mean, for us to start bringing up, about how the library closed it, several years ago, then you need to bring up CPC and is that additional revenue.
I'd say now's not a time to be building pickleball courts or fitness courts. Every little bit helps.
Yeah, except that money, to be fair, that money is there and it's not money that's tax money. It's revenue that we can only use for those purposes. So let's talk about the next subject, town meeting and the warrant articles. We got about 12 minutes. We're not going to get through all of this.
But to be honest, I think it has been trimmed down with the last Board of Selectmen meeting where they were having some trouble comprehending the different zoning changes. And so at that meeting, they essentially concurred that they would make a motion to defer all of the zoning articles to a future town meeting. And I believe they actually said indefinite.
Wow.
or not determined. So, I mean, that's pretty much table it for a long time. Hopefully it doesn't go past November.
Rob Shepherd said that hopefully the next tri-board meeting will hopefully have some ideas to discuss, but the tri-board isn't the board that's gonna drive the bus on overrides, right?
No,
it shouldn't.
Nor can it really be, a committee that finds the panacea that, this is how we generate all sorts of income for the town.
And where does an override start from? Only the Board of Selectmen can ask for an override.
Correct.
And it has to go to town meeting to be passed. That could happen. Both of those things could happen. But when it gets to the ballot, as Ann said repeatedly, it could be crushed. So that's just to answer those couple of issues. And you're right, the deficit is, there's no proposed cuts at this point. It's really early in the game for that, Kevin, and as they said several times. But getting back to the warrants, so that issue of the zoning issue is deferred, and how many of those?
There were 17 articles that dealt with zoning.
What does that bring the warrant
So
down
we'll
to?
be down to 25 or so.
And the major issue on that is going to be the school.
So the second to last article deals with school feasibility study. That's article number 43, and so they're looking. I believe the number is $1 million to do a feasibility study for essentially a new Campbell and Greenmont school. I think they're going to be combined.
Wow.
So.
And where are they proposing to put that?
That's part of the feasibility study. That
where it goes.
Where it goes. There's land at Campbell. There's a decent sized parcel, but is it big enough for two schools?
Two buildings.
Yeah, because
And
they
parking.
typically like to segregate those into actual separate buildings if you have two schools. Or does it need to be located somewhere else? And if it's located somewhere else, where does it need to be located? And then how much does that land cost?
East Dracut.
So
I think it's East Dracut, and I think we've been talking about this for a while, and we think that the vinyl property is almost a perfect spot for it.
Could be.
But it's going to be a high price to pay for that property because you're going to have to pay. You could take it by eminent domain, but it would take years to get it done, and that's not going to be a happy thing.
Not that it takes years to get it done; it takes years to get it settled.
Settled, yeah.
Because you can grab it.
Yeah.
But then it needs to be settled, and that can get protracted on for years and years.
Yeah.
You can see. I mean, they're doing the same thing in Lowell. They still haven't settled on the Arcan Drive professional office building that they took to build their high school.
Oh, okay.
Because that was at $7 million, and I think $7 million. But the numbers keep bubbling around, and it needs to go through the courts.
Yeah, and that's going to be a huge issue.
Yeah. So for again, there's this about 17 or 18 financial articles. Most of them are pretty standard. The budget, I believe, is at nearly $100 million this year.
Yes. Because it's going to be...
So that'll take less than a minute to approve if Dracut holds true to form.
Yeah. So in 2025, which is the following, not the budget we're going to be discussing at town meeting this year, but the following town meeting we'll be discussing, it'll be $104 million. Can you believe it? $104 million. I remember when it was 60. And now the school budget is 60.
Right.
You know?
So there are also some road acceptances that'll help bring some Chapter 90 money back to Dracut because we have more accepted roads.
What does the scuttling of the zoning issues do to the master plan?
So the master plan asked that an implementation committee be formed, essentially somebody that would oversee the master plan for the next 5 to 10 years, about what's being captured and what we're accomplishing. Scuttling it, to be honest, I think is detrimental to the whole process. I had approached Jim Duggan during the process of the master plan, some 6 months or maybe a little more before the master plan was finished, and I said, all indications are that zoning bylaws need to be updated because almost every single chapter deals with that. So I said, I think it'd be good if we could get it started now so that neither committee loses momentum. One goes right into the next. And he was on board with the idea until he talked to some of the selectmen. And then, as I said, a grumpy old man said no.
So, the grumpy old man is...
Of course, Jim Duggan chastised me for calling him a grumpy old man.
Grumpy old man, and that was, you're referring to Joe DeRocco?
Joe DeRocco.
Of course he is. We know that. He is grumpy old man, for
But
sure.
his question to Jim when it was brought up was, what's his angle on this?
What's your angle?
What's my angle on wanting the bylaws to be written? So,
how about...
I guess with him, there's always an angle.
There's an angle. Oh, yeah, there's always an angle, for sure. So, we had other issues to talk about. We have 5 minutes left. Richard, your issue on the Lowell Memorial Day Parade. We didn't even get to the Memorial Day Parade. I know. Curtis LeMay, unfortunately, the person who was accused of murdering Adrian Komborowicz was found not guilty, and that's a devastating blow to the family, obviously. Those are issues that are going to be... There's another trial coming up in August of another person who was in the car that supposedly is also charged. That's going to be a problem. You had a D-Day memorial that we were going to play. We were going to have to get to that maybe another time. There was an issue during the parade. What was that issue?
Yes, so during the parade, we had Tony Archinsky riding on the American Legion bus with me and some others. We had Heather walking the parade route like a trooper, like the trooper she is. And we had Allison Janest, Jennifer Kopczynski, and Ann Vandal riding in a classic car. Now, interestingly, we had some photos submitted to us of the car pulling into Dunkin' Donuts on Lakeview Avenue, where they had some car troubles. There appeared to be nothing wrong with the car, although I'm no mechanic.
Yeah.
Allison Janest and her components decided to exit the vehicle and walk the rest of the route right before they hit the DETV cameras. And in case you don't believe us real quick, let me try to pull up the photograph.
Pull it up. But
well, I can verify that because I was watching the parade from the top of Peabody Ave. So it's towards the beginning of the parade. And they, in fact, were riding in the car. I thought that was odd.
Can we pull up
now, they were there.
Computer?
No Joe DeRocco in the parade, as usual.
No.
He doesn't. No, he doesn't. He hasn't participated in Memorial Day for
do something
20
for
years.
Do something for Dracut?
Yeah, no, because that's his weekend.
We have the picture proof.
Yeah, show it up.
Of them in the car.
There we go.
Right there. Of course, there was no room for Heather because we have to have 2 selectmen and a town manager riding together instead of 3 selectmen.
That doesn't tell you where the power seat is, minus Joe DeRocco, who's in the trunk.
Really?
Right? Joe DeRocco's hiding in the trunk. Just interesting. That's interesting little stuff. By the way, kudos to our DATV staff.
Absolutely.
On the production.
Great job on the production.
You know, I think that it was very well done in terms of the filming of it and the presentation of it, and having it out in front of the high school where they could connect wirelessly to our disc.
Right, so that's some new equipment that that Gary had acquired to be able to do these wireless.
Board of Directors too had
yes,
a lot to do
that's
with
true,
acquiring
that's true.
that. We got to give credit where credit is due. So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight there's a big issue going on the federal government side where the debt ceiling is being discussed, and apparently there's a deal that has been struck between the White House and Kevin McCarthy, who's the Speaker of the House. And apparently there's a lot of unpleasant reaction to the Freedom Caucus. If those of you that are aware who the Freedom Caucus is, they're the real ultra-conservative people who wanted to see more cuts in the budget going forward. And apparently Kevin McCarthy insists, and others insist, that it's a good deal as a starting point, but it's not going to eliminate the ceiling, and it's just going to forego some of the stuff. There is some spending reductions and what have you, but
kicks the can down the road for 2 years.
Again, kicks the can down the road. Do you think Kevin McCarthy could be in any kind of trouble with his
Probably, but my first thought is that it seems that nobody likes this particular deal, so it probably is a good deal.
Right. And that's usually what happens when an arbitrator gets involved. They make you both unhappy.
Yeah.
And that's probably what's
and I suppose the fear of the extremes on either end, the Freedom Caucus and whatever the progressive left side says.
You can throw some,
that neither one of them really is. Both sides have been very vocal about not liking it, and will they scuttle the whole deal?
So Tim Scott jumped into the presidential race. You got that picture you can throw up there, Nate, the picture of Tim Scott.
Does Nate know who he is?
and Ron DeSantis. There's Tim Scott. He's now a presidential candidate. He's a very conservative Republican, and he's in the race. He's very good. I think he'd make a very good president at some point, but I don't think it's his time. And then Ron DeSantis jumped into the race as well, and that's going to be interesting to see what happens when they all get on the stage with Donald Trump. What's your prediction on the election? Do you have a prediction?
I think the viewership's going to go through the roof, and I think Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States.
Yeah, he's got a 46% jump on all of them. I don't see that dissipating very much over the next few months.
It's early.
It is early.
It's awfully early.
But I would love to see either one of those guys as vice president on a Trump ticket.
It'll be
and
DeSantis.
Then you could get 8 years in. Listen, folks, we've done a lot of talking here tonight. We gave you a lot of information, and there's so much more out there to get on all of those issues, and we urge you to watch the Board of Selectmen meetings and watch your tri-board meetings and whatever other meetings you can. Get out there and get involved and know what's going on, because it's going to affect you. Your taxes are affected by everything that happens at Town Hall. And until next time, we want to thank you all for viewing tonight. And until next time, when it's Wednesday and it's 6:30, it's What's Happening Dracut. See you next time.